Mexico, Honduras, Bolivia. These are all countries where criminal organizations have dug their nails deep into the political sphere through the power of the illegal drug trade. But what if there was a country in Europe that was facing the same threat? What if a massive underground gang controlled the most significant drug flow into Europe through bribes, torture, and public killings? This is how an innocuous deal between two countries led to the birth of one of the largest criminal firms in the entire world. This is how the Mocro Mafia has become the Netherlands' greatest security threat. Chapter 1. The origins of the Mocro Mafia. Understanding why the Mocro Mafia problem is so pervasive in the Netherlands means understanding the history of the relationship between the two countries. In the 1960s, economic liberalization meant the countries of Western Europe were seeing significant growth in the post-war period. Much of the Netherlands had been destroyed by Germany during the Second World War, and over 2 decades later, the rebuilding was still underway. On the 14th of May 1969, Morocco and the Netherlands signed a bilateral agreement to allow Moroccan laborers to migrate to the Netherlands as guest workers. The idea was a sound one. This new cheap labor would help balance out the high demand for construction in the Netherlands, while the Moroccan immigrants would be receiving good pay in a new home. The Netherlands weren't the only country who saw this opportunity, however. Belgium had already signed a similar agreement with Morocco 5 years prior in 1964. This period of heavy migration meant a Moroccan diaspora quickly grew within the Netherlands. Soon, an entire community of people with connections to North Africa arose in the Netherlands, even though many were second-generation immigrants and just as Dutch as they were Moroccan. The presence of this community, in particular, is critical to the growth of the drug trade in places like Rotterdam. While the Dutch sought to rebuild their country, they were also interested in something more recreational: cannabis. By the 1970s, the Netherlands had loosened its laws regarding the possession and consumption of cannabis, meaning a significant demand for the drug grew within the country. Luckily for the Dutch, it just so happened that Morocco has a long history of growing hashish. In fact, the Rif region is the world's largest cultivating area of the plant. When the demand for cannabis rose, the guest workers contacted their families who had been growing the plant for years back home to take advantage of the need. These imports increased until an underbelly of drug trade formed in high-traffic ports such as Rotterdam or Amsterdam. The trade expanded into more than just cannabis. The highly lucrative cocaine business took off, and by 2003, the streets of the Netherlands' biggest cities were under the control of the Mocro Mafia, an infamous group of drug dealers of Moroccan descent. Their activities are far from limited to drug trafficking. Money laundering, prostitution rings, and other illegal deeds all fall under the Mocro Mafia's purview. The gang doesn't act alone. It collaborates with other European criminal organizations to expand its reach and influence. By teaming up with major international players like the Italian Mafia or Russian gangs, they were able to gain access to essential resources such as weapons, contacts within political circles, and money laundering networks, which enabled them to take control of large parts of Europe's drug trade. This strategic partnership allowed them to become one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world within just a few years. The Mocro Mafia is considered one of Europe's most successful criminal organizations due to its ability to quickly adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining its core values of loyalty and cooperation among its members. From humble beginnings among Dutch immigrant communities in 2002-2003, it has grown into one of Europe's biggest drug dealers, with connections stretching far beyond Dutch borders into other countries on the continent. The future looks bright for this powerful crime syndicate, which continues to thrive despite external pressures from authorities trying to take them down. Understanding where the Mocro Mafia came from is one thing. Understanding how they operate is another. How does such a disparate group of individuals cooperate so efficiently? The answer might reveal more about the Netherlands than one might think. Chapter 2. How they operate. Like it or not, there are usually a few countries that pop into one's mind before the Netherlands when thinking of violence. On the Human Development Index, the UN's ranking of the living conditions within a country, the Netherlands even ranks 10th in the world. Yet some of the crime-related behavior in the country is shocking. Violence plays a huge part in the Mocro Mafia's image. The group's grip on the drug trade has led to an increase in violent crime in cities throughout the Netherlands. Drug deals gone wrong, turf wars between rival gangs and targeted assassinations are just some of the acts that have become commonplace due to their involvement in the illegal drug market. But the violence goes beyond gang disputes. Some reports detail borderline psychopathic tendencies. In 2016, the discovery of a soundproof torture chamber believed to have been used by a narcotics gang shocked the nation and served as a reminder of what those involved in the trafficking trade were capable of. The details were made public at the latest hearing in the case of 11 suspects, including an alleged ringleader known as Roger Piet Costa P, who were accused of planning to murder rivals at an apparent torture site in Woos Plantage in Brabant. Police officers, acting on intercepted messages, discovered 7 shipping containers in Woos Plantage in Brabant, 6 of which were allegedly used as cells containing handcuffs and leg cuffs. In the 7th container was a refashioned dentist's chair, with straps for tying arms and legs, finger clamps, scalpels, claw hammers, pliers, loppers, pruning shears, gas burners, tie wraps and duct tape. The container was soundproofed. Officers also found a freezer large enough to hold more than one person and a mortar mixing tub, which was allegedly going to be used for waterboarding victims. The court heard that a second site in Rotterdam was the operating base for an arrest team whose task was to pick up their intended targets and take them to the site in Woos Plantage. There are also allegations that members of the Mocro Mafia have infiltrated local politics to further their own agendas. They have used bribes, threats, and other forms of coercion to influence decision-makers at all levels of government. This has resulted in lax regulations and lenient punishments for those involved in criminal activities related to drugs or other illicit enterprises. Workers in the Netherlands' world-famous ports can have their gaze turned aside for €20,000. This was the case for customs officer Gerrit G, who worked with gangs to allow the flow of drugs through Rotterdam. In one instance, over 300 kilograms of cocaine were transported in shipping containers thanks to Gerrit G's help. Gangsters paid Gerrit 7.5% of the value of all the illegal narcotics he allowed to pass through the harbour unchecked. He worked in the pre-arrival department, where containers are selected for screening. By taking his clients' deliveries out of the system, he guaranteed the consignment's safe passage into Europe. It's not entirely down to greed-filled corruption either. The lives of those who publicly stand against the Mocro Mafia are at risk. The Marengo case is an ongoing trial of 17 high-profile Dutch-Moroccan criminals, with the cocaine kingpin Ridouan Taghi at its centre. Peter de Vries, an investigative journalist and crime reporter who was supporting the Crown witness during the trial, spoke about the case on an RTL show in Amsterdam. When he stepped out onto the street after the recording, a gunman approached him and shot him dead in broad daylight. Not only that, the Crown witness's lawyer, Dirk Weersum, had already been killed 2 years earlier by individuals tied to the criminal organisation. The message was clear. It doesn't matter who you are, we can get you. So far is their reach that even the Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, had to be placed under heavy police protection due to fears for his safety shortly after the killing of Peter de Vries. The Mocro Mafia has gained such a strong foothold in the Netherlands thanks to the liberal use of appalling violence, bribery, and threats. While high levels of violence usually plague drug trafficking, the killings in the Netherlands are unique across Europe in that even journalists and lawyers are targeted. Gangs having such power over everyday life might be expected in South American countries, but for a Western European state, the situation is alarming. That's precisely why Dutch authorities are hell-bent on ending this criminal organisation. But how can they stop something that has been growing to an astronomical size right under their noses for decades? Chapter 3. How can they be stopped? 80% of all drugs that flow into Europe are thought to go through Rotterdam and Antwerp. The Mocro Mafia controls a staggering 33% of that cocaine smuggling. With such a high volume of narcotics flowing into the Benelux, The authorities have their work cut out for them if they want to put an end to this influx. But how far does law enforcement go to bring them down? Let's take a look at how police investigations and operations are responding to this threat. The police response to this threat has been multifaceted. On the one hand, teams of investigators have been working tirelessly to piece together evidence from multiple sources to build up cases against members of the Mocro Mafia. From wiretaps and surveillance footage to undercover operatives, there has been no shortage of resources devoted to this cause. However, despite their best efforts, it can still be difficult for prosecutors to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that someone is part of an organized crime syndicate. As mentioned prior, the savage repercussions when working on these cases justifiably turn off many from pursuing the matter any further. In addition to investigative work, law enforcement has taken a more aggressive approach to its operations against this syndicate. Raids on suspected gang hideouts have become increasingly common in recent years as police try to get ahead of any potential threats posed by these criminals. Despite these raids and arrests, however, the shipment of narcotics continues to rise, seemingly unperturbed by the police's hard work. While law enforcement has made some progress in prosecuting members of the Mocro Mafia, many challenges and obstacles still stand in their way. For starters, it can be difficult for investigators to obtain enough evidence to withstand legal scrutiny during court proceedings without violating citizens' rights or risking informants' lives. Jan Meus, a Dutch crime journalist, described the Marengo trial as the ultimate test for Dutch rule of law. Should the suspects involved receive light sentences, it might be a massive blow to the police's efforts to curb the illegal drug trade. If the punishment is weak, what's stopping the trade from growing? Additionally, due to changes in drug laws throughout Europe over the last few decades, some criminal charges associated with drug trafficking may not carry as severe penalties as they once did, making it more difficult for prosecutors to secure convictions against members of serious organized crime groups. Despite these challenges, law enforcement agencies throughout Europe have successfully fought organized crime groups like the Mocro Mafia through intelligence-gathering techniques such as wiretapping and sting operations targeting high-profile criminals within these organizations. On the 28th of November 2022, Europol announced they had successfully seized 30 tons of cocaine in a major bust that saw authorities from 6 major European nations working together. However, while these successes are certainly noteworthy, there is still much work that needs to be done before crime groups like the Mocro Mafia will genuinely be stopped from wreaking havoc on innocent citizens throughout Europe. If solving crime was as simple as catching offenders red-handed, locking them in prison, and throwing away the key, there would be no more criminals in the world. Unfortunately for the authorities, drug trafficking is a far more complicated affair affecting many aspects of daily life. Tackling the issue means tackling poverty, corruption, gang violence, and so much more. The Mocro Mafia sprouted out of a benevolent agreement between 2 countries in the post-war period. The organization uses threats, murder, and bribery to maintain its iron grip on the Dutch and European drug trade. Though the authorities have made progress in fighting the gang, its influence in Rotterdam and Amsterdam is still plain to see. What do you think? Is the Netherlands a narco state? What do you think needs to be done to stop the Mocro Mafia? Leave a comment with your thoughts below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to OCG TV for more content like this. Until next time.